When a disabled girl is knocked out of her wheelchair by a school bully and no one helps her, students laugh, teachers look away, and silence reigns. But 30 minutes later, a new girl no one saw coming steps forward. With one powerful kick, she doesn't just knock the bully down, she flips the entire school's silence on its head. It was a bright Tuesday afternoon at Westbrook High, the kind of day where the sun seemed to tease the students with freedom as they dragged themselves through another school day. The courtyard buzzed with the usual energy. Friend groups scattered around lunch tables, some on their phones, others tossing footballs or gossiping. But in the middle of that controlled chaos sat Emily Carson, a sophomore in a baby blue dress, quietly eating her lunch near the steps. Her wheelchair stood out, not because of its black frame or green rims, but because she was always alone. Emily had a gentle face and shy eyes, often looking down at her book instead of people. Most kids didn't bother her, but today Jake Mallory, the star quarterback with too much ego and too many followers, had decided she would be the day's entertainment. His friends laughed before he even reached her. Emily looked up from her book, cautious. "Hey, Emily, you saving this seat for your imaginary boyfriend?" Jake sneered, nudging her tray with his foot. Emily flinched but didn't answer. Jake smirked. "What? You too good to talk to me now?" Then in one cruel motion, he reached for the handles of her wheelchair and jerked it back. The front wheels lifted. The chair tilted. Emily gasped, and then crashed sideways. Her lunch spilled. Her elbow scraped the pavement. For a moment, the world paused. Gasps, laughter, and the unmistakable sound of a phone camera clicking filled the silence. Emily lay on the ground, trying to push herself up, cheeks burning in humiliation. No one moved to help, not one, except Amara Daniels, who had watched everything from across the courtyard. Amara Daniels hadn't been at Westbrook High long, just 3 weeks to be exact. But even in that short time, she'd learned enough. Westbrook was polished on the outside, diverse on the surface, but underneath was a layer of quiet cruelty, where popularity bought immunity and silence was the unspoken rule. She had seen it before in different forms, in different places. But what she witnessed today lit a fire in her chest that she hadn't felt since she left her old neighborhood. She stood frozen at first, backpack slung over one shoulder, a sandwich half-eaten in her hand. Her eyes locked on Emily, face flushed, hands trembling, scraping herself off the pavement with no one helping her. Jake laughed and high-fived one of his buddies, completely oblivious to the gravity of what he had just done. He didn't care. He didn't even think twice. Amara clenched her jaw and walked away, not because she was scared, but because if she stayed, she might have done something right then and there she couldn't take back. She knew how things worked in places like this. You fight back, and suddenly you're the problem. She ducked into the gym's side entrance and sat on the bleachers where no one would bother her. But her thoughts kept racing. She'd only spoken to Emily once before, when the girl had dropped her math textbook in the hallway. Amara had picked it up and placed it on her lap with a quick smile. Emily had thanked her softly, eyes full of surprise, like no one had ever done that for her before. And now this? Amara's fist tightened. The image of Emily lying helpless, struggling to sit upright while people stood around recording and laughing. It wouldn't leave her mind. A few girls came in, talking about what had just happened. "Did you see her fall? That was wild. She should have stayed home if she can't handle jokes." Amara stood and walked out before she said something she'd regret. Her heart was pounding in her chest, not from fear, but from decision. She looked down at her feet, then at the courtyard clock. 28 minutes had passed. She turned back around, her steps slow at first, then fast. Emily hadn't stood alone. Not anymore. The bell rang, signaling the end of lunch. But not everyone returned to class. A small crowd had gathered near the courtyard fountain, buzzing with energy. Jake was there again, tossing a football between his hands like nothing had happened. His laughter echoed, cocky and careless, surrounded by his usual crew of boys in Letterman jackets and girls who cheered them on. Emily sat nearby on the bench now, her wheelchair upright again, but her knees still scratched. Her hair was disheveled, her blue dress slightly stained from her fall. She stared blankly at the ground, the tray of her untouched lunch balanced on her lap. Her body looked small, fragile, but what broke Amara's heart most was her expression, emptied out, like she'd folded herself inward just to survive. Amara stepped onto the courtyard pavement with calm, focused steps. She had changed out of her sweater, wearing now her school uniform properly, navy shirt tucked in, shoes laced tight. Every stride she took drew eyes. Some students whispered, others started filming again. Jake spotted her and smirked. "Well, if it isn't new girl, come to join the show." She stopped 2 feet in front of him. "You think it's funny pushing a girl out of her wheelchair?" He raised an eyebrow, tilting his head. "What's your problem? You her bodyguard or something?" "No, but someone needs to be." The courtyard went still. You could hear the wind rustle through the trees. Jake chuckled, tossing the football to one of his friends. "Look, I get it. You're trying to be all righteous and brave. Cute, but I'd step back if I were you." Amara's voice didn't shake. "You have 30 seconds to apologize to her." Laughter broke out around them. Jake rolled his eyes. "Or what? Or I'll make sure you remember her name the next time you try to make someone feel small." Jake stepped forward, chest puffed out, smirk gone. "You don't scare me." "I'm not here to scare you," she said. "I'm here to stop you." He moved to shove her aside, casual like he was brushing off a fly. "Big mistake." Amara stepped to the side and swept his arm away. Then in one precise move, she spun on her heel and brought her leg up in a wide, perfect arc. Her sneaker hit Jake square in the chest, knocking the air out of him. He stumbled backward into one of the fountain's stone benches and fell, wheezing. Gasps rang out. Someone dropped their phone. The rest just stared in disbelief. Jake lay there coughing, his pride shattered in front of the very crowd that used to worship him. And Amara? She didn't flinch. She didn't gloat. She simply turned toward Emily, who now looked up with eyes wide and wet, not from pain this time, but from something much deeper. Hope. For a long moment, the courtyard was frozen in stunned silence. Jake groaned, still on the ground, his hands gripping his side where Amara's kick had landed. His friends didn't rush to help him. The smirk that used to command the crowd was nowhere to be found. And Amara? She stood tall, steady as a statue, with her back to the fallen quarterback and her eyes locked on Emily. A girl from the crowd gasped, "She kicked Jake." Another whispered, "Did you see how fast she moved?" The phones that had once recorded cruelty were now pointed at something different. Justice. A teacher finally burst through the double doors of the building, breathless. "What's going on out here?" Jake tried to speak, but Amara stepped forward calmly, her voice level. "He knocked over a disabled student. No one helped her. No one stopped him. So I did." The teacher glanced around. Several students nodded slowly. A few even stepped forward. "She's telling the truth," one of Jake's teammates said reluctantly. "He pushed her out of her wheelchair during lunch. Everyone saw it." "She didn't do anything wrong," added a girl near the front. "Jake's been a bully for years. Someone finally stood up to him." The teacher looked shaken but grateful. "Come with me, both of you." Amara gave Emily a final glance, then followed the teacher toward the office building. But before she was out of earshot, Emily's voice rose, shaky but loud enough for everyone to hear. "Wait!" Everyone turned. Emily wheeled herself forward slowly, her chin lifted, her voice stronger this time. "She's the only one who treated me like a human being today. Please don't punish her for that." Another teacher arrived and took Emily aside. The students stayed rooted, digesting what they had just witnessed, something more powerful than fists, a shift in how they saw themselves. By the end of the day, the school was buzzing. Jake was suspended. A formal investigation was open. Amara received a warning for physical retaliation, but was not expelled. But more than anything, the event changed something deeper at Westbrook. The following morning, the courtyard at Westbrook High felt different. Gone was the casual arrogance that once hung in the air like smog. The whispers had changed too, less about gossip, more about reflection. Students who had once turned blind eyes to cruelty now avoided Jake's crew entirely. Some even walked up to Emily, apologizing for their silence, offering help with her books, or simply smiling with kindness. Emily, for the first time in what felt like forever, didn't feel invisible. In homeroom, she sat by the window, Her wheelchair faced the sunlight, her sketchbook open on her lap. But instead of drawing flowers or dreamscapes like usual, she drew something new, a girl standing tall. One leg raised mid-kick, hair wild in motion, and beneath the sketch, she wrote one word, Amara. Later that day in the cafeteria, Amara returned after her one-day in-school suspension. She walked through the lunchroom like a storm that had passed, calm, respected, understood now in a way that didn't need words. She carried her tray to a small table by the back wall, expecting to eat alone. But halfway through her sandwich, someone wheeled up beside her. Emily. Mind if I join you? She asked. Amara smiled, gently surprised. Not at all. Emily looked down for a second, gathering her words. I've been invisible for so long, I forgot what it felt like to be seen, to matter. You've always mattered, Amara said softly. They just refuse to see it. That's on them, not you. Emily's lips trembled with the beginning of a smile. Thank you, not just for standing up to him, but for standing with me. Amara nodded. Next time, you won't have to face it alone. The lunchroom gradually grew quieter as more students noticed them. Some were still unsure of what to make of Amara, but others, they watched with something close to admiration, and maybe guilt, and maybe, just maybe, a seed of courage forming in their own hearts. Later that week, the school counselor invited both girls to speak at the upcoming assembly on kindness and inclusion. Emily hesitated. I'm not really good with crowds. Amara looked at her. You don't have to be loud to be powerful. You just have to speak truth. I've seen what that looks like. The morning of the assembly, Emily wheeled up to the microphone, heart pounding. I used to believe silence was safer, she said, voice soft but unwavering. That staying quiet would keep me from getting hurt, but silence didn't protect me. It isolated me. Until one person showed me I was worth defending. She didn't know me, but she saw me. In the crowd, students shifted in their seats, listening in a way they never had before. She reminded me that kindness isn't weakness, and strength doesn't always mean fighting. Sometimes it means standing, even if it's just standing beside someone who can't. Tears slipped down cheeks, teachers included, and when Emily wheeled off the stage, she didn't go alone. Amara was there, waiting at the steps, hand outstretched. The applause wasn't just for a speech, it was for a beginning.